Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life, and it is the end of the year. And these are my prediction videos that I make for all the carriers going into 2025 and maybe in some cases beyond. But be looking for those videos throughout the week. This one is T-Mobile, so I'll start off with T-Mobile, and then we have AT&T, and then we have Verizon 2025 prediction videos coming up. These will be longer videos, so make sure you grab your snacks, your milk and cookies, and of course, hoping you guys had a good Christmas. So this article is from time.com. I'll leave a link to it in the description. I think this fits very well with the video, the title, The Future of Connectivity. A lot T-Mobile has a lot riding on its future now. I I want to say T-Mobile is in a good position today, right? Today, as it stands, they have a great spectrum portfolio. They have great momentum, so all of that, right, is good. Some things in 2025 that we don't have to predict. The U.S. Cellular deal is set to close. The MetroNet deal is set to close, and the Lumos deal is set to close. Those deals are already happening, and that's going to run into 2025. So those are some of the deals that are set to happen. So we don't really have to predict that, right? We could still maybe speculate if you think those deals are not going to close. But I mean, most people that I speak with, others that I've talked to, others that I've seen comment on tech blogs and other sites, it's like 99% approval rating on all three of those deals. So T-Mobile will be busy in 2025 with another set of integration, right? One is going to be brand integration with the Lumos and Metronet deal. And then the other one is going to be another network integration, but on a far less scale than the Sprint merger. So the US Cellular, the 2,100 sites, that should be a breeze for T-Mobile. That should be nothing compared to the amount of sites and small cells that they had to decommission and touch throughout the Sprint merger, that they're still, to this day, converting some Sprint Keep sites. And they probably will continue to convert more Sprint Keep sites in 2025. And that's not a prediction either. That's actually happening. Like, they still have to do Sprint Keep sites in 2025. So those two sets of integration is what they'll have to deal with. One is the brand with the fiber deals, because it's going to all be the Metronet and Lumos is going to all be T-Mobile branded. The trucks, the employees, the billing, everything will be T-Fiber on both of those deals. And then the US Cellular integration from a network perspective, that will probably be the most time consuming on that one. I think the store integration and everything else will probably happen relatively quick. I think I'll give that 3 to 6 months. The network integration probably more like 12 to 18 months. So T-Mobile will be busy in the first part of 2025 with that. Now the predictions. One of them you've heard me talk about in some of the videos is cable. I think that's closer to happening than some of you think. Right, and I'll leave it at that. I won't go too much into detail. I have a document. I have some inside track, but that's a speculation of mine, and I can speculate that because it's not publicly official, so it's speculation. But T-Mobile will get a cable player in 2025 or 2026. I don't know when exactly they announced the deal, but they need it. They need a cable player. They need offloading. They are the only player that is the size that they're at, right? They have like 100, I think it's 27 million total connections. They're the only player that doesn't have offloading somewhere, right? T-Mobile today can't go to a business and say, hey, we have you on FWA, we're going to offload you onto our fiber network. They are the only player of that size and scale that can't do that. So they're reliant on a strategy that's filled with tons of spectrum and sites, site densification, until they get the cable player. If they can get the cable player, then that changes. Now there's a little bit of offloading, right, depending on the market. And then there's fiber assets that they'll gain too, that they might be able to do fiber to the cell. For an example, Spectrum. Very early on, T-Mobile was using Spectrum for fiber to the cell until they transitioned over to AT&T. So now that they might own and operate some of that fiber, they might be able to do fiber to the cell again with their own fiber, get some of those owners' economics. So that's a speculation. A big one is the cable deal. I think that will be probably the biggest deal that will take us through the rest of this decade, through 2030, right? Because it's going to take a long time to integrate this. Some are probably going to view that as a mess, right? T-Mobile taking over the coax, the copper, they're going to view it as a mess. But it's really up to T-Mobile how they're going to move and how they're going to strategize this. But this is going to be the biggest merger that they're going to announce besides Sprint. This should be a bigger one. And it's one that the company needs. They need something to offload and to tell investors at some point, like, hey, we have 127 million, right? Total postpaid or total subs. We have our eyes set on Verizon. I think they're like at 142 or 143 million. And then what? Right? The investor's going to be like, okay, now you got to Verizon levels. What else are you going to do? Right? So now they can pivot to the home broadband more aggressively. And the fiber, not fiber, but the cable acquisition or merger, whatever it's going to end up being, is critical for that offloading. T-Mobile won't admit it publicly because the investors in the market might sense some fear and struggle, but T-Mobile needs offloading. I talk to engineers daily that tell me at the market level, it's a nightmare to continue to optimize and what's the word I'm looking for? Well, just stick with optimize for FWA. It's a nightmare because it's a lot of usage. One household, right, depending on usage, on average, it's 500 gigs. It's growing 10% annually. That's a lot of mobile lines, right? If the average mobile user is at 12 gigs, you could do the math, how many mobile lines they need to add onto that sector to make up for one FWA connection. And let's say you're adding 5 or even 10 onto that sector. That's just explosive amount of usage that never would have been on that sector. So it's good for monetizing because there isn't another 5G killer app besides FWA that's being monetized at that scale and that quickly. But excuse me, but it's still usage that the network is going to struggle with over time, especially now that they have a goal of getting to 12 million FWA customers. Yes, they still have spectrum to deploy. They still have spectrum to refarm. We get all that. They still have sites that need 10 gig backhaul. So that's right, still going to get faster, but still it's just a tremendous amount of usage that's hard to really explain in words. You can only try to put it into words to get people to understand, but it's just very, very tough on the network with the amount of usage. And then, right, what about 8K and as technology advances, you need, right, faster speeds in some cases. Right, if you're doing 100 to 200 megabits on T-Mobile FWA, that might not be enough in the future. So you might have to reevaluate your buying choice when 8K becomes mainstream, if that ever happens. Right, 4K is not even mainstream. It's starting to. You can select it as an add-on on some streaming services, but it's mostly still 720, 1080 for live TV. But streaming services are getting more popular, and that content is streaming in more and more and more 4K. HBO Max, Apple TV, Netflix. It's mostly streamed in 4K now, most of the newer content and series. So that's an added strain onto the network. And I'd assume that if 8K becomes bigger, the streaming platforms would pick up the 8K quality a lot sooner than live TV. And then we got the World Cup coming up in 2026. So that's going to probably be, I would assume, live streamed in 4K by that time. Everyone's getting on board with 4K. I think Netflix today is streaming 4K, the NFL games in 4K. So it's more mainstream than it was a few years ago. So I will acknowledge that. But the second prediction, right, that some are probably going to be very torn over, maybe very debatable in the comments. T-Mobile will close the coverage gap to Verizon and AT&T. They will do that, I think, in the next 12 months. If they don't get close enough, it'll probably take another few months after that. But I think they close that coverage gap to not necessarily toe-to-toe, but I think they close it enough to where it doesn't matter much anymore, if that makes sense. Right? It's going to be like kind of like a back and forth type of situation. Oh, they have a little bit of a coverage gap here, but Verizon has a little bit of a gap here where T-Mobile works and vice versa, right? I think the coverage gap is going to be far and few in between in the next 12 months, or so I've been told. I've been told at the border of New Mexico, Arizona, I forgot the other state that it borders, in the Indian reservation, T-Mobile is building like 150 sites. And they're doing that across Wisconsin, I'm told, and several other states. And then you still have that Starlink beta that's going to be tested and then eventually go commercial. I don't know if it goes commercial in 2025. It's really tough to say. At this point, they could just wait and say, hey, look, we're testing it now, but we're going to launch commercially with all the services, right? They might get a waiver approved in 2025. Who knows? But they might say we're going to commercially launch with calling, texting, data. It's very possible, right? The texting can work now, but the calling and the data, you can't have one without the other. You have to have both because it's voice over LTE, right? So you need data to make the call work. So I think they wait, and maybe you can take that as another prediction, but I think they wait until everything is ready to really go full blast commercial. For now, I think it just remains in the beta stage, and it will help plug in the coverage gaps, the ones that T-Mobile never intended to build any coverage, and neither did any other carrier. At least that's what it's intended for, or so we've been told by T-Mobile publicly. Off the grid, where terrestrial networks aren't available. But if T-Mobile uses this to fill in gaps on like Interstate 10 as an example, then we got problems, because then we really have to see how that service performs, because there's going to be people traveling in and out of those satellite cells. And if it can handle it, then by all means, that's fine. But if it's not going to be as smooth as a terrestrial native network, then I don't want it. Right? I only want it in those areas if I'm mountain hiking or if I'm on a paddle boat in the middle of the ocean. Then I'm like, okay, this service is intended for what I need. I just need to send a quick text. We made it. We're safe. That's it, right? But going on a major interstate where there's a gap, they just need to deploy cell sites. And that's what I believe they'll do, right? We're seeing more and more of that, closing the coverage gap. And I think by the end of 2025, majority of that coverage will be closed to the competition. Verizon and AT&T will still have an edge, but it's going to be far and few in between. I don't see that being too drastic of a decision in the buying decision, right? I don't see that being too much of an issue anymore. I think T-Mobile will get close enough by the end of 2025 to where people can say, hey, I'll choose T-Mobile. I have coverage everywhere I go, work and play, right? There's still going to be specific areas where T-Mobile will struggle, but it's not going to be like it was a few years ago or even maybe 12, 18 months ago. Just looking at Nebraska, I mean, that state had no native coverage prior to the merger. They covered it with roaming on Viaero. Now, about 85% of that state is covered natively by T-Mobile. That's how quickly they put up sites in that state with 5G. So if they can do that in Nebraska, I think is about 65,000 square miles. They can fill in the rest of those gaps. No problem. And of course, it's going to be evaluated. They're going to look at it, does it make business sense, cost sense? They're going to look at all of that. But I think in 2025 they closed the coverage gap to the competition once and for all. And they continue becoming a better even a better company, a better network, and even possibly lower churn because of it. And then the third prediction, right? The price increase. I'll throw that in, right? Because it's not official yet. They will raise price in 2025. That's a prediction of mine. I know that's probably going to be considered a bad prediction. People don't want to pay more, but they're going to raise price in 2025, and I think it's going to be on legacy accounts. They're going to pick and choose again, and they're going to raise price maybe like $5 or something like that, and those people will either take the hit or they're going to leave. I think that's how T-Mobile has to look at it moving forward. They really have to move the margins as quickly as possible. At the size and scale of company that they are, they have to move margins because they have to look at the competition. If Verizon and AT&T still have more buying power than them at the size and scale that they're at today, then that's a problem. Because you have to be able to compete going into spectrum auctions. You have to be able to compete for merger and acquisition, right? You have to be able to say, hey, I can buy that company. And T-Mobile is well positioned to do that. But if there's ever like a bidding, they might not have the power to outbid Verizon and AT&T today, right? So be on the lookout for the third prediction, price increases, right? It's going to be, I think it's going to be in two forms. It's going to be, one is going to be the legacy. They're just going to straight up raise the price of the legacy. And then they're going to look at, I think, more so into the Go 5G Next. They're going to look at including more value throughout the year 2025 to get people to incentivized and attracted to upgrade more to the Go 5G Next. They might do, right, any phone, any condition permanently on just that plan. They're doing it now for a limited time offer throughout the holidays, but they might include that permanently and call it an uncarrier, right? That's just a prediction. That's something that they might do. They might add some other perks, streaming perks, music. I don't know. They might do that. I think they look to increase the value on the Go 5G Next to get more people into that plan so they can make more money, right? So those are the two ways I think they try to do it. One, the legacy customer, they're just going to raise the price. They're going to try and move the legacy customer onto newer plans. But if not, they're just going to raise that price straight up, and they'll monitor and see what happens with the churn. And then the other one, like I said, they're going to look at the Go 5G Next, and they're going to look at it, including more value to try and get more people onto that plan, because it's going to be a very low percentage that are going to want that plan. But if you entice people, if you add more value and everything, I think you'll get more people onto that plan, especially as new customers come in the door, if you make it good enough, right? You have to see what your limits are, and then you have to see what the limits of the consumer are, right? They've been doing additional things to the Go 5G Next. Like I said, any phone, any condition, that was just added only to that plan. Then they added $5 line ads for accessories like smartwatches, tablets, $5 onto that plan. They added Hulu onto that for streaming, right? So who knows what else they might add, but it's already feature packed. So we'll see what T-Mobile limits are. They might not add anything else. Who knows? But I think they try to make some additional value for that plan so people can be more attracted to upgrade to it. But those are the three that I have. Let me know your speculations in the comments, of course. I want to hear from you as well. But I think cable, to close out the video, I think cable is a very, very real speculation, and I think it's going to come sooner than some of you anticipate. The network gap is going to get closed. You can see it each year. They get closer and closer and closer. And again, that's not to say that Verizon and AT&T are sitting still, but T-Mobile is moving at a great pace, and it meets the needs of their business, and that's how they're going to be able to lower the churn. And then 3, price increase. I think most of you probably anticipate that anyway from happening. The network's very expensive, and T-Mobile's making some major acquisitions, so they need more money. But let me know your thoughts and speculations in the comments. Like, share, subscribe if you're new. Follow my social media outlets. This is Tyrone with Tech Live. See y'all in the next one. Peace.